Hey everybody, this is Brian here. I wanted to talk about self-esteem a little bit today in this harsh, crazy world where there's all these things happening. I wanted to give you guys my top 10 self-esteem tips. So let's get to it. Number one on here is that I want you, first off, to remember that I'll always love you because you're you. And that's something I think that I got from Mr. Rogers. And it's always really been an important quote to me. Uh, Number two on here is that I want you to remember that you're 100% good enough as you are internally. The music and the film industries in our country teach us that self deprecation and codependency and romantic relationships um, are the things that we have to wait for, like a white horse, basically sitting here in a dark room waiting for a white horse, you know? Um, but you have interesting skills and qualities as you are without waiting for some figure to just ride in. I think that they basically teach us the skill of codependency, which isn't really much of a skill if you think about it. Number three on here is going to be to accumulate some hobbies across a wide range of new mediums. When you have more things to do, it's more validating instead of feeling like you're constantly looking for external sources of self-worth, you know? That can be really, really invalidating. And when people are just looking for someone to explain their feelings to, I think that um, actually having something to do when there's not someone else there, it can be a good facsimile sometimes, you know? Number four is don't let people step on your personal boundaries just out of fear that they won't like you. There's nothing wrong with having these boundaries, like not wanting people to eat meat or smoke around you or something like that, you know. For me, sometimes I ask people not to watch films with flashing lights in them because of my epilepsy. I have photo epilepsy, you know. Um, but I just want you to know it doesn't really make you a prude just because you don't want to actually be around those things. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. If people don't like them, it doesn't make you a prude. It means that they don't respect your standards enough to make a minor and consequential adjustment to their behavior. So it's kind of on them if you think about it. Um, Number five, uh, sorry if I'm having a little bit of jaw myoclonus today. I'm a little bit later in my seizure cycle. Anyways, let's get to number five on here. Another important tip is to know the difference between guilt and personal accountability. You may think you remember that fact logically and that it's obvious, the difference between guilt and personal accountability. It sounds really, really self evident, but don't forget that fact emotionally because you'll end up blaming yourself for a lot of things that will only make the situations worse all around, for your kids or for your family or whoever else is actually around you, um, uh, and whatever you're going through, if you're going through something like a withdrawal or something. The key middle point is really to realize that as a human, you aren't perfect, but that doesn't make you a piece of crap. Uh, you can take personal accountability for any mistakes in the past without bearing the black cancer that is guilt. You don't have to feel guilty about yourself just because you might not have been perfect in the past. Maybe you've turned your life around completely, and you've made some changes that have made you into a completely different person. Why feel guilty about things in the past when you've made those changes already? Or when you could make those changes, why feel that guilt instead? Say you hurt someone emotionally, owning up to that is going to make both of you guys feel a lot better than crying alone in a dark room and saying hurtful things to yourself and listening to Linkin Park. I mean, it's really it's not going to make either of you guys feel better. But most of the time, the people that we hurt through our mistakes are the ones that we love or are very close to. So, I mean, they're probably going to want the best for you, and they'd rather probably, I bet you, have an apology than have, like, it's better that you go to AA than 7-Eleven, for example, is all I'm trying to say. When does that guilt strategy ever really help anyone? I think that um, they've teached us through these songs, and they've teach the youth in our culture to take it out on themselves emotionally and to feel the pain instead of addressing the problem. But really, seriously, when has that guilt strategy ever helped anyone? The universal truth is that we've all made mistakes. So if you feel you did something wrong at some point, I've made mistakes too. And I'm not saying that anyone watching this video, that any of those mistakes are lessened or mitigated, or that I'm trying to make you feel like your problems are invalidated. Um, but I'm just saying that they're going to feel a lot better from you going by and saying, "I'm sorry, I hurt you. Uh, it wasn't okay," than going up to those people like with the same problems demonstrated full blast. Um, Basically, people who love you or are close to you otherwise won't benefit from you being hurt or hurting yourself or holding back from progress with guilt. Um, there was a family member I had, I won't mention their name, a long time ago, who went to AA instead of going uh, back to alcohol. And I think that that's really a good exemplary that's really a good example of what you can do between the difference between guilt and self accountability. Anyways, of course, though, this really, I just want you to remember that you aren't alone in any of these issues or problems you might have, that millions of people suffer from them every day from that same thing. I say this not to minimize any of the hard feelings you may have, but I just want you to know that you aren't a bad person because of a slip or a mistake. Of course, I mean, we have a system of jails and we have a system of prisons and everything. Of course, this opens legitimate questions, since not everything that we do is acceptable or okay. Where is the limit? Where is it okay? Um, and This is where I would like to re-mention the gap between self-accountability and guilt. Recall that you can own up to something or account for it without emotionally abusing yourself or otherwise harming yourself. Guilt serves no sort of purpose. Imagine if you messed up and you felt guilty. It would make your spouse, friends, or family feel better if you were to, punch a mirror, or basically feel worse and hit a further low. I've made mistakes too, and none of us are perfect. And I'll always love you guys for yourselves no matter what. In a world full of people who've stepped into the mud, don't see yourself as alone or feel that guilt instead of addressing the issue. I recall a brave person I know, like I said, going to AA. It's demonstrative of self accountability, and that helped his family and his friends. And he knew, they knew he was coming back on the upswing. And so they didn't feel worse for him or feel like he was sinking further. Guilt would be the equivalent of him going to 7-Eleven to buy vodka. Basically, that's not going to help. This number 10 on this list of self-esteem tips is self-worth. And that might sound kind of redundant, but take the time to value yourself and what you've done right, but also to realize that you're worth a hell of a lot to the people around you, and to me and to anyone else that you're friends with or family, to your mother, to your father. You're worth a hell of a lot to the people around you, that extends beyond self-esteem to seeing how clearly how much of a value you are to those people that are on your life in a mundane daily basis. The last thing that I wanted to talk about on here is number 11, and that's the last tip is basically uh, in widening the gap between self accountability and guilt. If instead of taking it out on yourself, you're going out into the world to reconnect with people or apologize for past mistakes, if they were in the radius of them, Remember that not everyone is so open hearted, and that's not your fault. And not all of them will instantly forgive you, but that doesn't mean that you've re fucked up or something. It's extremely hard to accept self blame or without self blame or guilt if you've ever had any sort of self esteem issues. And that's really, really hard. But it doesn't mean that those are I don't want to say legitimate because I don't want to illegitimize anyone's emotions, but I really want you to know that it doesn't mean it's all your fault, basically. All you can do is try to right the past wrongs. If people want to hold those guilts against you, I mean, and they won't allow you a second chance, the thing I want you to remember most importantly is the fact that it's not all your fault, that you aren't alone through all of this, and that somebody out there loves you, and that person is me. And I hope that, you know, I hope that some of these tips uh, were worth more than just some nebulous guy with a beard rambling to you on the internet. I love you guys because you're you, and peace out. And I hope that everyone has uh, I hope that you all have a wild and crazy party and have some fun throughout this really, really uh, just life changing time. I think for everyone, all globally. Um, but anyways, yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. I love you and peace out.